Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar today on writing technical reports. Our presenter today is Joseph McAuliffe, and I'll hand over to him in just a moment. But I just want to talk you through a few housekeeping tips that'll just help the afternoon go smoothly. The slides that you see and the recording will be available on our SlideShare page as well as our YouTube channel, and we will send you links in a follow-up email, which should be done within the week. When the webinar finishes, there'll be a survey that pops up, and if you could please give it a couple of minutes of your time to give us your feedback and tell us where we could improve, we would very much appreciate that. And lastly, as you're listening to Joseph speaking, you might have some questions. If you look at the bottom right of your control panel, you'll see a little question box, and this is your way to communicate with us. If you could type your questions in here, please, then Joseph has already allocated time at the end to answer these. So without taking any more of his time, I will now hand you over to Joseph McAuliffe. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Sherry. Welcome, everybody. My name is Joseph. I come from a company called Beat, based in Malta and in Dubai. BEAT stands for Business Excellence in Achieving Transformation. So, of course, we help organizations operate more efficiently and more effectively through various activities such as business process management and project management. And of course, most of the time we end up writing reports for our clients, which then we take forward into implementing. Today, the topic is all about writing technical reports. We will try to address the topic as broadly as possible. The idea today is to pass on the message what report writing is all about. Well, this idea started so many years ago. Being an engineer by profession, I have spent most of my life working with technical people who will do very valid research, design, analysis, and different types of works that is very technical. The only problem that I had seen in this aspect is that many a times such technical people, such scientists, such engineers, such technicians did not communicate well with their management team or with their colleagues. I could not stand this really, and I decided to do something about it. So I started researching on what really is missing in us technical people. And of course, one of the key things was our communication skills. We tend to be very technical sometimes, but rather weak on communication. So the idea was that I will try to research and look into what it takes to convey a message across and pass the information for people to do something with it. From there onwards, I started discussing with my colleagues and extracting information that they would want to convey to non-technical people. I discussed with non-technical people, asking them what they need to hear from the technical staff, and I started putting bits and pieces together. I started slowly developing this skill for technical report writing, and over the years I dare say that I personally think I have improved my skills pretty much so, and therefore I also help a number of colleagues of mine and clients, of course, to write reports that are more meaningful, more effective. What happens is that many a time research is going on, analysis is going on, technical activities are happening, and all is fine until one fine day the big boss comes across and you know, in a discussion he mentions one word where he would ask for us to send him a report. And many a times we find people who actually panic at the mention of the word report, not knowing what to expect, what should we go about and do. I've seen this so many times, yes. I remember many years ago, my boss would walk into our office and he would ask me, Joe, I need a report to tell us all about the quality, about our product, our operations. And of course, I would, jump on my toes and go and speak to my guys and tell them, listen, guys, boss wants a report, and let's start doing the report. And these guys would go ahead digging into loads of data, doing all the detailed analysis that needs to be done. To cut a long story short, most of the time, in an effort to provide the best report that we can imagine, we would end up delving into too much detail that is not actually required. After all the effort writing what we think is the best report, the boss would come back and say, listen, Joe, I mean, I did not need a thesis. I just wanted a high-level report just telling me that we're okay or not. And you can imagine the frustration after all that effort, having all the people working on digging out data, doing analysis, and drawing conclusions and things. And of course, these experiences would have taught one to start being a bit more rational about jumping on the mention of a word report. Across the time, you start asking yourself the question, well, what would be a well-written report? What should there be in a well-written report? Well, I think one of the first things that one needs to establish is the objective of the report. When boss asks for a report, well, what does he really want? Do we really know what he wants? Maybe yes, maybe not. Maybe we assume that the boss wants a very detailed report, when in fact all he wants is a high-level one. On the contrary, we might assume that he wants a very high-level report, when in fact he's expecting a very detailed report. So before we know exactly what the objective of the report is, we can't really set ourselves at writing the report. So one of the first things that we need to make sure is that we fully understand what the objective of the report is. What do we need to achieve by the report we are about to create, to write? Do we just want a high-level overview? Do we want a detailed report that will enable us to identify ways forward in taking decisions, in initiating improvement activities, in taking certain decisions that are going to be critical to our process, to our organization? So I guess that before we go away and panic and start digging into masses of data and compiling all sorts of different bits of information, one of the very first things that we need to identify is a very clear objective of what we want to achieve by the report we are about to write. Having that clear, having a good agreement as to what the objective of the report is, naturally, we need to conduct the appropriate research in line with achieving the objective agreed to. If the objective of the report is to be a detailed analysis of our performance, then of course, we need to delve into the appropriate type of research. If the report is meant to be just a high-level indication of where we stand today, maybe the research can be at a higher level without needing to delve into the masses of data, into loads of history. So we need to regulate the research that we do in our report in line with the objectives that we would have agreed to by the person requesting the report. Having a well-researched report means that we can take sound decisions based on outcomes from our report. Naturally, people like to understand what is in the report. we need to make sure that people feel comfortable with the kind of report that we present to them. Jumping across from one page to the other, from one chapter to the other, trying to hunt around for information is not really the best way to go about it. Therefore, making sure that we have the right structure in place is key and fundamental in organizing the way our report looks. Data has to be presented in a following manner. Results achieved out of that data have to be clearly extracted in a clear way. Introducing the subject needs to be clear. People need to be warmed into the subject matter. People need to be taken through a climax into the report, substantiated with the right amount of data and statistics and additional information to enable us to extract outcomes from which we can deduce, we can conclude the status of our research. Subsequently, we need to indicate a way forward, and therefore from the outcomes that are derived from our research, from our appropriate research, we can come up with a way forward, with recommendations, with suggestions, and enable our client, who is effectively requesting the report, to do something with this report. One of the key objectives that we need to keep in mind is that the report is meant to achieve something sensible. Going through a report without extracting the required objective is really and truly a waste of time. Unless we know something more once we would have gone through the report, then what would be the scope of having that report? The way we present the information across the structure plays also a very important part. People, our readers, need to feel comfortable reading through our report. And therefore, we need to pay specific attention to the writing style that we adopt within the report. Okay? We need to be consistent in our writing style. We need to be correct in our style, diplomatic and direct as is appropriately and necessary. More than anything, it needs to be projecting good writing skills and good grammar, good spelling, good tenses. Now, of course, this is not a language skills webinar. It is assuming that, of course, whoever is writing the report is competent enough in writing in the official language within his organization. Okay, so definitely we are assuming here that if reports are being written in English, because English might be the official language for the organization, we have good English grammar skills. Okay, it would be a pity to have in a report a well-researched and well-structured report that is appalling in the grammar used in the report. Okay. The perception of the reader is somewhat lost big time when we read through a report, however well researched and however well structured it is, but if it is dotted around with various grammatical and spelling mistakes. So please let us not underestimate the need for whoever is the author of the report to polish up the grammatical side of things. We shall not concentrate on the grammatical side of things. We're taking that as assumed and as being there already. So therefore, we will continue on the main topic, sticking with conveying a technical message across a report, which might be presented to management, to non-technical colleagues of ours. It could be our senior management, it could be our colleagues, it could be our subordinates. Right. So we have all seen a number of different reports in our careers. We have come across reports that are a few pages long, have come across reports that are fat and bulky and somewhat bombastic perhaps, others which are very formally presented and official in that sense of nature. We have also unfortunately come across those boring reports that we really don't want to read, but we must read through. We have also come across some very creative and colorful reports. They're full of pictures, full of nice colors, looking pretty more than anything, yes? We have all come across all sorts of different reports, but the key thing that we need to keep in mind is whether the report is thin, fat, colorful, or boring, the reader is seeking to extract value out of that report. Unless the report provides value, unless the report addresses the objective that we are aiming to achieve on the initiation of the request, reading through any other kind of report that does not deliver value, I dare say, is more than anything a pastime, a waste of time, one way how to perhaps spend some minutes over a coffee and reading through something which does not give you anything additional, any additional knowledge. Okay, so we need to keep in mind that the objective of the report must be clearly defined. It needs to be well researched, well structured, written in a proper way in order to deliver value to whoever is interested in reading that report. If no value is passed on, why bother writing the report? Why bother making it look pretty? So the concept I always communicate with people is that when you write a report, make sure you contain sufficient information in it that will deliver value. Too much information might be overwhelming. Too little information might not enable us to achieve the objective that we are set out to achieve. Right. The real challenge is that our reports give the value that is expected out of it. We need to draw conclusions out of this report. Any conclusions drawn need to be clearly stated, unbiased, without any room for vagueness. If the report does not address the objective it is set to achieve, we can say that the report is nothing than a time robber, what we term waste. One way of wasting resources is having people working on reports that do not deliver the value that is expected. And one may ask, okay, these are all things that we all know. Okay, how do we address these questions? How do we address these issues? I will just take you through some points that are more than anything food for thought for anyone whose job is at some point in time writing a report. Yeah, these points would maybe help in minimizing the opportunity for making reports time robbers, waste resources. The first thing is we need to identify who is the intended reader, who is the intended audience of the report. For whom are we writing the report? Unless you know clearly for whom the report is written, you might tend to use the wrong structure, the wrong writing style, and therefore not pass on the message as intended. Again, sometimes we know exactly for whom the report is going to be written. Yes, we might be writing the report for our boss, whom we know very well. We might be writing the report for a client. Maybe we're writing the outcome of our analysis to our client. Maybe we are writing a report to our suppliers. Do we know who is going to be the person receiving and reading the report? Sometimes we don't really know who the intended audience is. For example, if you are writing a report to be published in the media, who is the intended reader? Could be anyone. It could be your neighbor. It could be a politician. It could be an equivalent technical person. It could be anyone who is not in your line of business. Therefore, of course, when we are writing a report, when the audience is not exactly defined, we need to be more careful in what we put into the report, in how we structure the report, in the writing style. If I am writing a report to fellow IT colleagues, my writing style could more or less be rather technical because possibly they know my language. On the other hand, if I use the same technicalities and the technical jargon that we would use within the IT industry to write a report that is meant to be published on a public magazine or public paper, the audience may be anyone who's interested in the subject, but might not be as technical as we are. Therefore, putting in too much jargon into that kind of report might be a bit of a risky business in the sense that people might read the report, but they might not understand what you mean by it. The value being transmitted would be limited. If the value is not to the maximum, we are risking wasting our time writing it and wasting the time of our audience trying to read it, trying to make sense out of it. Therefore, one of the first key things that you need to address is, okay, who is the report intended for? Is it the boss? Is it my subordinates? Is it my colleagues? If it is my colleagues, are they fellow technical colleagues? Are they colleagues who come from a different sector, a different business environment? Okay, so we need to be very careful and selective in identifying who is the audience of the report. Another question that makes sense in asking is trying to identify your potential reader. What do they know about the material inside the report? They might know more than you. They might know less than you. If they know more than you, they might actually challenge what you put in the report. If they know less than you, you need to give them value by informing them, making them aware, educating them through your writing style and through the content of your report. Therefore, again, if you know you are writing a report to your boss who has been there and done that and been in your situation before, his experience might be over and above your own experience. Writing a report to your boss who might have broader experience than you do currently because he has been there already might mean that your report is not anticipating his needs. It also might mean that he might challenge you back with questions that you are not prepared to answer. Your boss might not know as much as you do. Your boss might not be a technical person as much as you are. You might be a specialist in a field. He might be a generalist in the field. Therefore, your boss might know slightly less or maybe nothing about your material, about your content. Therefore, your reporting style needs to be informative in such a way that your boss can actually understand what you are trying to say. Okay, so we need to make sure that we are well aware of the knowledge the reader has about the subject matter we are talking about. They are familiar with the topic, and we need to know whether they are familiar with the topic, and we need to also know how well they know the topic. Okay. Another question would be, right, okay, I have been asked to write this report. I am expected to write this report. Why would the reader need this report? Why is the boss asking this particular report of me? what is he set to achieve? This should be addressed by clarifying what the objective is. The boss might walk into your office and ask you for a quality report, for a progress report, for a project report. Unless you clarify with your boss or your delegate or your subordinate, whatever he is, okay, what do we need to achieve by this report? What do you want it for, boss? Are you going to present the outcome to the board of directors? Are you going to discuss the outcome with our potential suppliers? Are you going to discuss the outcome with key clients of ours? Are you going to discuss the outcome with colleagues in my department? So a key question is in identifying why I need this report. Okay, make sure that it is clear and set out in the objective. While writing the report and whilst putting in the material content in the report, we need to ask ourselves the question as to what do I need to tell the reader? What is the message I need to convey to the reader? Do I want to tell the reader this message or a different message? Without compromising on the facts, okay, because we insist very much that what you put in a report is always factual, because you are the owner of that report and you are responsible for it. But we need to really address what is it necessary to tell the reader. If we tell them too much information, people might find it baffling. And therefore, we might not need to tell them the whole story and how we came about our conclusions. Okay, so we might need to be selective in the type of detail we go into when we are writing our report. Some information might be superfluous, might be not really necessary. Okay, so we might decide not to put it in the report, not to overwhelm our audience. Okay. On the other hand, if it is necessary to be said, then please let us say it clearly. Another thing that we need to consider is, right, okay, we are going to tell the reader this kind of information, and we want the reader to do something with it. So we need to ask the question, right, what is the response we want the reader to have? Do we want to shock the reader with our report? Do we want the reader to jump on the opportunity and do something about it? Do we want the reader just to accept the information we are trying to communicate to them? What is the response we need to expect from our reader? Okay, so this will also determine what to put in and how to put it in. If we want to be dramatic, if we want to shock our readers, we need to make explicit certain level of detail, certain level of information, the way we project it. If we want to be milder and not shock our readers, we need to adopt an appropriate writing style that will not alarm the readers whilst passing the message clearly in a non-vague manner. Okay, so we need to make sure that we, who are the author of the report, are in control of what the reader's response is expected to be. Now, in our original questions, when we are asking what does the reader know, how well informed they are about the topic, how knowledgeable they are about the topic, we might identify that there is a gap either way. They might know more than us, they might know less than us, they might know as much as we do. How are we going to bridge that gap? Are we going to be explicit and detailed? Are we going to be high level and not detailed? Okay. So we need to address this question in the sense that we present the outcome from the report, the material content, the structure, the writing style in such a way that we bridge the gap in the most effective manner. Right. Oops, sorry there, just another question. Again, we are the author, we are in control of the report. We need to make sure that once the reader has read the report, they will do something with it according to what we need them to do. We might do some technical analysis, we can do some research, we can do our designs, and we want management, senior management, to invest in new machinery, new equipment, new processes. So the way we write and present the report needs to instigate the need for that action to be addressed. Okay, so if our intention is to justify the need for an additional investment, we need to be aware that the objective of the report is actually to bring that investment into the organization, to justify employing a different team, to justify skilling certain people, to justify going to different suppliers or different markets. How are we going to generate the desired response from our reader? So we need to have the right choice of words, the right style, the right facts presented in a sense that we instigate the right response to be adopted by our audience. Okay. As you notice, most of these questions are very much focused on our readers, our audience. We are writing a report for an audience. The audience is in our control in the sense that we are writing in a way that will make our reader do something about the outcome from our report. Now, we can write fat reports, we can write very nice colorful reports, we can put in all sorts of details and statistics and calculations in the report. We need to keep in mind that many a times our reports can get overly complicated. If our reports are overly complicated, the tendency is that they either get reviewed very quickly, if ever at all, or maybe only parts of that report may be actually reviewed. What we try to promote in our support with clients and even in ourselves is that we make our reports as lean as possible. Now, as you may all know, lean is all about flow. It's all about making the process move on without interruptions. Therefore, the way we structure our report, the way we write our report has to be in a flowing manner. The subject matter has to be brought in a flowing manner, taken through the details in a flowing manner without interrupting the flow, and coming to the point in as simple terms as possible. We don't want our audience, our readers, to feel stressed reading our report. Yes, we need to make sure that our audience is working their way through the report in a stress-free manner. Not many people have the time to review very detailed reports that do not add too much value. Therefore, as far as is possible, as far as is practically possible, our reports need to be as direct without too much what we call fat in them that does not add value. Yes, so without being too dry and too lacking of desired information, we need to pass on the message. Therefore, striking the balance between what we put into the report, the material, the content that we put into the report, to achieve the objectives that we would have agreed upon earlier, is a bit of a a skill that one would need to develop as they write the reports and they gain experience. Remember that not everybody has the time and the resources available to spend 2 hours reading a report that you would have presented to them. Most of the time we just need to come straight to the conclusions and take actions from there. On the other hand, we have to make sure that we would have documented appropriately how we came to those conclusions. Therefore, the structure here plays a very important part. Whilst we might need to document our reasoning and our research well within the report, we need to extract the vital elements that need to be communicated on in a very clear manner so that people who are not interested in the detail can get to the conclusions in a very accessible manner. On the other hand, sometimes someone might need to delve into the content to understand how the reasoning, how the conclusion was drawn. And therefore, through a well laid out structure, we need to make sure that whoever is interested in the right detail can actually find the detail in the right place without too much jumping around between one chapter and the other. Okay, so structure here is very important because with the right structure, we can make our report writing flow. Whoever is reading our report is doing this exercise, this process in as stress-free a manner as possible, and maximizing on the time available for us to read the report. The least thing we want is that when we present reports to our audience, they get shocked. The least thing we want is that people feel dismayed for the fact that they need to read our report. Therefore, we need to be a bit careful here, okay? Too much detail, too much beating around the bush without really passing on the value that one would desire is not exactly the real thing that we want to convey in technical report writing. We need to have the right structure to enable us to pass through the report in as flowing, in as stress-free, in as maximized time and resource manner as is possible. Now, we might all be familiar with the classical Deming cycle that is very much common in quality improvement and such initiatives. Report writing is nothing less involving than any other process. Report writing is a process, and as the Deming cycle is applicable to various processes, report writing being a process can actually also be fitted within that model. For starters, we need to plan the report, the type of report that needs to be written, the format, what type of format, the layout, how should we lay it out? Should we put in diagrams? Should we put in tables? Should we put in technical detail? Should we keep the detail out? The content, how are we going to manage the content? So planning the report is very, very, very important. And there are various ways and techniques in planning reports. I will share with you one of my personal favorites, and I can probably say that if not all, but most of my reports start in this manner. I will share that with you in a minute or two. Planning is key. Okay, I insist in investing sufficient time to create a good plan, and then after I've put the plan together, I can go and start implementing, and I skip over to the do part of the Deming cycle. I write out the facts, I present the data, I present the relevant information in as concise and direct way as possible, without beating around the bush, keeping the concept of lean in mind. We need to make the report flowing, stress-free, and whoever our audience is can extract the right information that they are looking for in the most efficient manner. As I go about my business in developing the report, in the production part of the report, in the do part of the report, I need to make sure that I am constantly in line with the key objective. Remember, what we said earlier is the focus is our reader, and we need to achieve the objectives that would have been set out up front. We need to make sure that our reporting is addressing the scope of the report. It is addressing the objectives set out initially. It is addressing the scope to the right audience. If I get over complicated and my audience is not technical, my audience will not understand my message. My audience might misinterpret what I want to say, might find my report boring, too complicated, too technical. Conversely, the wrong way around. If I am too brief, if I am not addressing the right issues, my audience might think that I did not do a good job. Therefore, we need to strike the balance in how we present the content in such a way to hit the audience interest in achieving the scope that they are seeking. We must make sure that whatever we write in the report is our responsibility. We have to write the facts. A report that is not based on facts is not delivering value. If it's not delivering value, it is waste. If it is waste, we don't want to spend time on doing it, writing it out, reading it. Okay? So we must make sure that the right data, the right information is presented to the right level of detail without being overwhelming, without being too brief. Therefore, again, the focus remains on the reader. Who is the reader? What do they know about the subject? Have they been there? Have they done that? Will they challenge us? Okay, the more we know about this, the better our report writing skills will get. Naturally, as we go through our production process in the report, as we start writing the report and checking that we are constantly in line with the report, we need to do the proper adjustments. We need to make sure that our report is aligned and tuned in to the right frequency of our audience. If need be, we do some touches, we do some proofreading. We have to confirm that we have written the facts and nothing that is not factual. We have to make sure that we are going to distribute the report to the right audience. Have we forgotten anyone? Are we sending the report to the wrong people? And eventually, once we do distribute the report, we need to seek feedback. Ask the question, I have sent you the report, boss. What do you think about it? Have you had time to look at it? Is there any way I can improve it next time? Sometimes feedback comes automatically, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it proves to be a challenge. Sometimes people feel awkward in telling you that your report was a bit boring. Help them, ask them, be direct. Did you find my report interesting? And from their verbal and non-verbal response, you can get the right feedback, which will help you write a better report next time. Okay, so do request for feedback and make sure that you use that feedback to pop it back into your plan next time, and you start over the plan, the do, the check, and the act feedback. Planning the report, most of the time, starts from there. My whiteboard in my office, the flip chart in the boardroom, a blank sheet of paper on my desk. I normally start my report with a simple mind map where I put into my mind map the different elements I want to address in the report. I put in the sub-elements within each element I define. I organize them. I know which will be the first part, the introductory part, which will be the definition of the report, what will be the content, the subsections in the report, what will be additional supplementary information, and therefore will fit into appendices into the report. I find that technique to be a very effective tool for starting the report. It effectively forms my framework in organizing the report. Okay, so as a personal advice, I do solicit very strongly to spend a few minutes in creating a structure that might look as untidy as that mind map. I have taken a picture out of my office just last week, actually. Okay, that will be a report which might be a few hundred pages long. Starting from there, I have different people working on that report, of course, and there are different specialities, addressing different elements within that mind map. Unless we know exactly what part fits where to make it flow, we'll end up, having a report that is not structured. Okay. I would be interested to hear from you any other techniques you use to structure your reports. Right. Typical report structure. What would it look like? Normally, I would structure a report in a similar fashion as is indicated in that slide you have over there. If it is a formal report, it might include all of those sections. If it is a less formal report, we might want to remove parts of those sections. Okay, so that might be what I would normally term to be a formal report, which needs to be well structured and official. If I am writing a weekly report about the progress of a project I am working on, or the quality level of my organization, or my financial reporting statements, maybe I don't need to put in all that detail. But let's start from the different sections, and we'll address them as we go along. So I am going to assume a typical formal report that needs to be formally structured to include a title page, a cover page, something that is bound, neat, with nice lettering on the front, with a clear title that describes the report. And therefore, I might put in the title page, which clearly identifies what the report is all about. It should be descriptive enough and accurate enough, but not too long-winded. Okay, the title needs to be brief, concise, but clear enough to tell me what the report is all about. Writing a report and titling it, I don't know, the transport system in my country, it could be too broad. The transport system, right? What transport system? Private transport? Public transport? So we might want to narrow it down a bit. Yes, the public transport system in my country over these last 10 years, or maybe the transport system in my country 2005, 2015. Yes, something that gives a good indication of what the report is all about. I can put in a preface that would tell me what the report is about, who it is intended to. Acknowledgements, maybe I want to thank some people who have helped me in doing the research. Some maybe universities who have contributed to the report content. Some colleagues of mine who might have helped me in gathering the information. An abstract that will help the reader decide what the report is about and whether they should actually spend time reading it or whether they should pass it on to their delegates. The abstract would normally give a brief summary of the report, and it would be maybe a few hundred words long, not much more than that. So it's a very quick overview. This report is about that. I'm interested in it. Okay, I read it. I am not interested, therefore I move on. Table of contents helps the reader, helps the audience identify the structure, how the report is laid out, where to find what. Technical reports many a times contain diagrams, they contain circuit diagrams, they contain figures, they contain schematics, they contain tables, graphs, statistics. It might be useful to put a list of tables and figures just like you would the table of contents, because your audience might be interested in that particular table that displays the technical specifications of the machinery you're talking about within your report. Okay, so having a list of tables, a list of figures, a list of diagrams might come in handy. The executive summary is probably what gets read in your full report. Therefore, in your executive summary, you need to put in within 1, 2, 3, 10 pages maximum, depends on the length of the report. You have to put in the key points and conclusions that the report is talking about. Sometimes the executive summary might need to be separate from the main document in a way that you can actually distribute the executive summary of the report as a separate document. That might go to the board of directors. Maybe they don't want to know about the full details of the report as long as it's documented. Okay, so you might need to consider the executive summary as a standalone document that really passes on the message that your full report is meant to deliver. Okay. Really and truly, the executive summary is the last bit that is to be written, and it is probably the most stressful part of writing the report, because within a very concise number of pages, you need to derive the key messages, the key points, the key conclusions that you want to communicate to your audience. Right. The body of the report is the bulk. The body of report would be the bit that would probably appear in your mind map when you come to structure the report. It would be writing in the findings, it would define the scope and the objective of the report, the findings, any observations, any discussions you want to talk about. It would include your research or your graphics, your discussion tables, your statistics, yes? And it would lead on to the conclusions that you want to derive. Now, you need to be careful that in the body of the report, you don't put in too much detail that it will interrupt the flow of the report. For example, if I'm writing an IT report, a report about some software, putting in 5 pages of code inside the main body of the report will definitely distract the flow of whoever is reading the report. Therefore, you might want to put in the syntax of the code as an appendix, as a separate, at the back end of the report. And you will refer to it only in the main body. Okay, so you need to keep in mind that the main text needs to be the part that keeps flowing and is addressed to the general audience to make an interesting read. Okay. Let us not forget to draw conclusions that are clear out of the report, out of your findings, out of your research. Remember that a report is historically based. So the main body of the report, up to the point where you are drawing conclusions, is all historical based. It is documenting the outcome from your study, your research, your design, the current situation. The only part that you can switch on to a futuristic approach is within the recommendations. That is where you are allowed to, strictly allowed to switch into a futuristic mode. Therefore, you say, from the conclusions drawn, we would recommend that this will happen. That is where you are switching into the future tense. It is only right to make clear references, and you cite the references that you would have quoted inside your report in a section that you would normally title as references. And of course, as you go along, you might come across different texts, different material that might be interesting. You might not actually make use of it in your report, but it might be an interesting read for people interested in your topic. And you might include that in a bibliography. Okay, it would be a list of other related material that is an interesting read that is in line with the topic of the report. If the report is technical, if it reports different jargon or different terminology that not everybody might understand, please do not forget to put in a clear glossary so people know where to look for if there is any abbreviations. Okay. A glossary in a technical report is generally considered useful for the non-technical people. As I said, the appendices will include any other detail that is necessary for anyone who would be interested in the detail of your discussion. If the IT guy is interested in the coding used in writing a routine in your computer program, put that routine within an appendix. The non-IT reader will know that you're talking about the coding in the program, but they're not interested in reading the coding, understanding the coding. But the IT person might be. So within the body, within the discussion, you just make a reference to it. If I am an IT guy and I am interested in the coding, I switch into appendix A, B, C, D, what have you, and look at the coding. If I am a commercial person and I am not interested in the coding, in the technical coding, I'm interested in how much the investment will cost, I might not be interested in going through the coding, but I might be interested in going to the right appendix, which breaks down the detail of all the financing and the payback periods and all the financial calculations. Therefore, you use the appendix to include in it the necessary detail that specific professions might be interested. I need to stress the fact that your reports are your responsibility, and make sure that you present facts, okay? Where opinions are to be expressed, make it clear it is an opinion, okay? So that you can distinguish between the fact and the opinion. And when you are doing assumptions, make it also clear that this is an assumption based on these criteria. Therefore, you are making it clear that if any of these criteria are not adhered to, your assumptions may fall over. Okay, you need to distinguish between what is fact, what is an opinion, and what is an assumption. The key message here is that we want to keep reports as simple as possible. The idea is to keep them flowing, to pass on the messages as clearly as we can without too much fat, without too much complication in the process. If you would like to know more about techniques and how to develop technical reports, and also about, most of the time you are asked to present the report to a board of directors, to your colleagues, to your subordinates. Many times you end up having to present it across a meeting. Please do check Informa's website. We do hold regularly training courses in technical report writing. The next one coming up will be early December. So do check out Informa's website. There will be a course running in the first or second week of December. We would be very happy to welcome you to these courses and share with you some opinions. I hope that through this webinar we have communicated clearly the message about reporting and keeping reports simple, not overly complicated. We will dedicate a few minutes for some questions. So if you would like to ask some questions, we are happy to answer them. We'll allow a few minutes to questions, and we'll be happy to hear your questions. So let's see if there are any questions on the table. Right. One of the questions is an email considered to be a report? Well, why not? It is a format that is less formal, perhaps, more brief, and to the point. So maybe if you are writing a weekly report, you might want to pop it into an email, but give it the proper structure. Normally, if you are writing a report that needs to be filed and needs to be dug out, I tend to normally advise our clients to have the report, even if it's a one-pager, written in a standard format on a separate document, and then use the email to distribute that report. Because if we leave it in the email, you know what happens in email. Yes, I know I've written a report about it. It's in my email. There are 1,001 emails in my folder, and you know you will never find it. Okay, so it is always sensible. I'm not saying to print it, but you might want to store it in your hard drive, in your server, in a specific section that is called reports. Okay. Another question is what language should be used in reporting? Well, it normally depends on the official language adopted by the company or the country. Okay. So while many companies use English for their official language, it is really up to the company to decide what will be the formal language to be used in the company. As long as the language is agreed and understood by the stakeholders who are expected to review the report, we see nothing wrong in using one's national language. Of course, we need to consider the fact that in the kind of environment that we are currently living in, when you know, we're dealing with suppliers across the globe and everything, it's pretty much pointless using a language that is not understood by the key stakeholders in the business. Okay, so normally we tend to suggest using an international language, so that if I'm sending it to a supplier of mine across this other side of the globe, there is clear understanding in the messages being. Right, I guess that's it for today. I hope that you have had some value out of this discussion. Thank you very much for your attention, for being there, for listening to us, and until we meet again, I wish you well. Goodbye.